The Galactic Council chamber was silent as Ambassador Krelax stood before the assembly. His translator device turned his alien language into words everyone could understand. Behind him, on the massive holographic screen, floated an image of Earth, looking small and vulnerable. Around the planet were hundreds of alien warships, all belonging to the 7 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Ambassador Krelax raised one of his forearms and pointed at the human delegation sitting in their observation booth. His voice echoed through the vast chamber as he spoke. The human delegation has exactly 48 hours to accept our terms. You will surrender control of your outer colonies. You will submit to our trade regulations. You will accept council oversight of all your military development programs. These terms are not open for discussion or negotiation. In the human observation booth, Ambassador Lisa Morgan sat completely still. Her face showed no emotion as she listened to the aliens' demands. Next to her, Admiral Jack Hayes was reading information on his tablet computer. His jaw was tight with anger, but he remained quiet. Around them sat other human representatives, including scientists, diplomats, and military advisors. They all waited to see what Lisa would say. The council members believed this would be easy. They had studied human history and knew that Earth had only been traveling in space for 70 years. Humans were the youngest species to ever join the galactic community. Surely these newcomers would understand that fighting was pointless. Surely they would be reasonable and accept the Council's generous offer to let them join galactic civilization under Council authority. Lisa stood up slowly from her chair. She smoothed down her dark blue diplomatic suit and looked directly at Ambassador Krelax. The entire chamber watched her with curious eyes from a dozen different species. Ambassador Krelax and honored members of the Council, she began in a clear, calm voice. Humanity has carefully reviewed all of your demands and considered them with great attention to detail. The alien delegates leaned forward in their seats. They expected to hear words of acceptance and gratitude. They expected the humans to understand their place in the galactic order. They had done this same process with 6 other young species over the past 1,000 years. It always ended the same way with submission and compliance. Our answer is no, Lisa said simply. The chamber exploded with confused chattering in 100 different languages. Translator devices worked overtime to convert the chaos of sound. Ambassador Krelax's sensory stalks on his head twitched violently in surprise. His species showed shock this way. You refuse our offer? Do you not understand what will happen if you reject the Council's authority? We understand perfectly well, Lisa replied without raising her voice. You have threatened our people, our freedom, and our right to govern ourselves. Humanity has dealt with bullies many times throughout our history. Ambassador, we have 4,000 years of written records filled with tyrants and empires that thought they could force others to submit through threats and military power. We know how to respond to bullying. Admiral Jack Hayes stood up beside Lisa and crossed his arms over his chest. The Council assumes we are weak because we are young in space travel. You are about to discover why that assumption is dangerously incorrect. Humans do not respond well to threats. We never have, and we never will. Counselor Vex Thor, whose body was made of living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns, spoke up in a voice like ringing bells. This is complete madness on your part. Our combined fleet outnumbers your entire navy by more than 300 to 1. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. You have no allies among the other Council species. You cannot possibly win a military confrontation with us. Lisa allowed herself a small, cold smile. That is where you are wrong, Counselor. We do not need allies for what happens next. We have something better than allies. We have determination, and we have surprises that you cannot imagine. She touched the communicator device on her wrist and spoke clearly into it. Admiral Carter, this is Ambassador Morgan. You have full authorization to proceed with the protocol. Execute Midnight Sun immediately. 300,000 kilometers away from the Council station. Admiral Helen Carter sat in the command center of the orbital defense platform called Liberty. The platform orbited Earth and coordinated all human military operations in the home system. When she received Lisa's authorization signal, she turned to her communications officer, Lieutenant Kyle Peters. Send the emergency action message to all units throughout the system. All ships and all platforms are to execute Protocol Midnight Sun exactly as planned and rehearsed. What the Galactic Council did not know, what their extensive surveillance network had somehow completely failed to discover, was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario since the very first contact with alien life. Humans had hoped for peace and friendship with other species. They had worked hard to build good relationships. But they had also studied history and knew that hope was not a strategy. Hope without preparation was just wishful thinking. So while human diplomats smiled and talked about cooperation, human engineers and military planners had been very busy building defenses. Back in the council chamber, alarm systems suddenly began making loud warning sounds. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the massive space station. Counselor Vex Thor's crystalline body pulsed with angry red light as he accessed the security network. What have you done? What is happening? Lisa Morgan picked up her briefcase and began walking toward the exit door. The other human delegates followed her in a calm, organized line. They had practiced this moment many times. They knew exactly what was happening and what would happen next. Every human in the chamber moved with quiet confidence. Ambassador Krelax called out after them as they reached the doorway. Ambassador Morgan, I demand that you explain what your military is doing. Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout your solar system. You must stop. Whatever you have started before this situation becomes a shooting war that you cannot possibly survive. Lisa paused and turned back to face the alien ambassador one final time. Her expression was serious, but not angry. We rejected negotiation, under threat. Ambassador Krelax, we gave you a clear answer to your ultimatum. What happens in the next few minutes and hours is entirely the result of your decision to bring warships to what should have been a peaceful diplomatic discussion. You wanted to see what humanity was capable of when pushed into a corner. Now you will learn. The responsibility for everything that follows rests on your shoulders, not ours. The human delegation left the council chamber and headed toward their docked transport ship. Behind them, chaos spread throughout the station as council members frantically tried to understand what was happening in Earth's solar system. Their sensors were showing things that should not be possible. Hidden weapons platforms were suddenly appearing. Ships that had not existed on any of their surveillance reports were now visible and active. The humans had been hiding their true military strength all along. And somewhere in deep space, moving at faster than light speed, a massive human battleship was approaching the Council's homeworld. Commander Greg Sullivan stood on the bridge of the United Nations Starship Defiance and watched the countdown timer on the main screen. The numbers were getting smaller with each passing second. Around him, his bridge crew worked at their stations with focused concentration. Nobody spoke unless they needed to share information. The tension in the air was thick, but controlled. They had been training for this mission for 2 years, and now the moment had finally arrived. Lieutenant Amy Hughes sat at the navigation console and called out the time remaining. 30 seconds until faster-than-light transition. All ship systems are showing green status. Power levels are optimal. Jump coordinates are locked in and verified. Greg nodded and gripped the railing in front of his command chair. His knuckles were white from the pressure, but his voice was steady. The Defiance was one of 12 battleships that humanity had built in secret shipyards hidden in the outer solar system beyond Neptune. The construction had taken place in areas where the Council's surveillance could not reach. Every component had been carefully shielded and hidden. The Council believed Earth had only 43 military vessels. They had no idea about the ghost fleet that had been waiting in the darkness for exactly this moment. 15 seconds to jump, Amy reported. FTL drives are fully charged and ready. All crew members are secured at their stations. The plan was simple to explain but terrifying to execute. While the Council's massive fleet surrounded Earth in what they thought was an overwhelming show of force, the Defiance would jump directly into orbit above the Council's homeworld. One single human ship appearing without warning in the heart of Council space. It was not an attack. It was a message. It was a demonstration that humanity could reach out and touch the Council anywhere they wanted. 5 seconds, Amy said. 4, 3, 2, 1. Executing jump now. The universe seemed to twist and bend around the ship. For a brief moment that felt like forever, Greg experienced the strange sensation of faster-than-light travel. His stomach felt like it was turning inside out. Colors appeared that did not exist in normal space. Then suddenly everything snapped back to normal, and the main view screen cleared to show their destination. There it was, below them. Zentara Prime, the homeworld of the Galactic Council. A beautiful blue and green planet that looked remarkably similar to Earth. The capital city was visible as a cluster of lights on the day side of the planet, and there were no defense platforms, no military ships, no protection at all. The Council had left their most important world completely undefended because they never imagined anyone would dare attack it. Jump successful, Amy reported with relief clear in her voice. We are in stable orbit at an altitude of 300 kilometers directly above the capital city. Position is exactly as planned. Greg turned to his communications officer. Lieutenant Steve Morrison, open a broadcast channel on all frequencies. Use standard galactic language and human language simultaneously. I want everyone on that planet and everyone in this system to hear what I am about to say. Steve's fingers moved quickly across his control panel. Channel is open, Commander. You are broadcasting to the entire planet and all Council territories within range. Estimated audience is over 40 billion individuals. Greg took a deep breath and began speaking. His words would change the course of galactic history. Attention Zentara Prime and all Council territories. This is Commander Greg Sullivan of the United Nations Starship Defiance. We are currently in orbit 300 kilometers above your capital city. Our weapon systems are fully armed and operational, but we have not targeted any civilian areas. We are not here to attack innocent people, but I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. If one human colony is attacked, if one Earth ship is destroyed, if one single human life is harmed by Council forces, this battleship will use its weapons to turn your capital city into a crater that will be visible from space. He paused for a moment to let those words sink in across 1,000 different worlds where beings were listening. Humanity did not seek this confrontation. We came to the galactic community hoping for peace, friendship, trade, and cooperation. You responded to our friendship with threats and ultimatums. You assumed we were weak because we were young. You made the mistake of forgetting to ask yourselves an important question. Why would a species that went from first-powered flight to faster-than-light travel in less than 100 years be less dangerous than you calculated? Why would creatures who survived and thrived on a world filled with deadly predators, natural disasters, and diseases be easy to intimidate? Down on Zentara Prime below, panic was spreading through the capital city. Government officials stared in horror at the massive human battleship that hung in their sky like an ancient sword ready to fall. Emergency broadcasts were being transmitted telling people to evacuate the government district. Air raid sirens, that had not been used in 200 years, were wailing across the city. You have exactly 48 hours to withdraw all of your forces from Earth space, Greg continued. Remove your blockade. Recall your fleet. Return to the negotiating table and treat us as equals, not as subjects to be controlled. If you refuse these terms, if you choose to continue with threats and military force, we will show you exactly what humanity learned from 4,000 years of constant warfare on our homeworld. We will demonstrate why we are the most experienced warriors in the known galaxy, even though we are the newest species in space. He made a gesture to Steve, who immediately closed the broadcast channel. The bridge was silent for several seconds, as everyone processed what they had just done. They had just threatened the entire Galactic Council while sitting in orbit above their homeworld. Sir, Lieutenant Kate Mason called out from the tactical station. I am detecting activity on the surface. Multiple military installations are powering up their defensive systems. I am also picking up emergency communication broadcasts. They are evacuating all government officials from the capital district and moving them to underground shelters. Let them evacuate, Greg said quietly. We will not fire our weapons unless they force us to do so, but they need to understand what we are capable of doing if they push us too far. They need to feel the same fear they tried to make us feel. On Zentara Prime below, the Galactic Council convened in an emergency session inside a deep underground command bunker. The holographic display showed the human battleship hanging in orbit like a threat made real. Emergency Counselor Thexlar, a veteran military commander who had fought in the last major war 2 centuries ago, studied the tactical data with growing respect for human planning and boldness. They have completely outmaneuvered us, Thexlar said in his clicking language that the translators converted to standard galactic. Look at the precision of their timing. The rejection of our ultimatum happens at the council station. At exactly the same moment, their hidden fleet reveals itself at Earth, and precisely coordinated with both of those events, this battleship appears here above our homeworld. This was not a panicked reaction. This was not improvisation. They have been preparing for this exact scenario for months, or possibly years. Ambassador Krelax's sensory stalks were twitching with anger and humiliation. It is only one ship, Counselor. We have hundreds of atmospheric fighters on this planet. We could launch them all and overwhelm this human vessel through sheer numbers. Counselor Tembri, whose scaled reptilian face had gone pale with fear, shook her head. And then what happens, Ambassador? They destroy our capital and kill millions of our people before our fighters manage to bring down their ship. How many civilian deaths are acceptable to satisfy your wounded pride? How do we explain to the families of the dead that we sacrificed them because we could not accept being outmaneuvered by humans? Thexlar called up more detailed analysis on the tactical display. I have been studying their battleship carefully. Its stealth capability that allowed it to approach our system undetected is at least 30 years more advanced than our best projections of human technology. Its power signature suggests weapon systems that we have never encountered before. And it jumped directly into high orbit without using any jump gates or known transit routes through our detection network. That means their faster-than-light drive is more sophisticated than anything we possess. Back on the Defiance, Greg watched his tactical display carefully. His ship was alone and surrounded by a civilization that could theoretically destroy them with enough force and enough sacrifice. But every second that passed without them attacking proved his point. Humanity would not be intimidated. Humanity would not submit to threats. Humanity had the capability and the will to strike back if pushed. 48 hours earlier, Admiral Helen Carter had been standing in the command center of Liberty Station, staring at the tactical display. The screen showed the positions of 300 Council warships arranged in a blockade formation around Earth. Humanity's visible fleet of 43 ships looked pitifully small in comparison. On paper, it was not even close to being a fair fight. Captain Danny Brooks walked up to Helen, carrying a data tablet in his hands. Ma'am, the Ghost Fleet is in position and ready. All 12 battleships are reporting full operational status. The Council surveillance network still has not detected any of them. The stealth systems are working perfectly. Helen nodded slowly as she processed this information. The stealth technology had been humanity's secret weapon. Engineers had developed quantum field dampeners that made the ships nearly invisible to conventional sensor systems. The technology was expensive, consumed enormous amounts of power, and was absolutely worth every credit spent on development. The Council thought they knew where every human military vessel was located. They were very wrong. What about our defensive platforms? Helen asked. Captain Brooks checked his tablet. All platforms are online and weapons are armed. The Council thinks we have 80 orbital defense stations protecting Earth. They do not know about the additional 200 platforms we hid inside the debris field around Luna's construction yards. The platforms have been disguised as abandoned construction equipment and scrap materials. Helen allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had learned the art of deception very early in its long history. The Council had assumed that human honesty in diplomatic discussions meant humans were incapable of military deception. They were learning the hard way that there was a big difference between being honest in negotiations and showing all your cards in a strategic situation. Her personal communicator suddenly chimed with an incoming call. Admiral Carter. This is Defense Secretary Linda Hayes calling from the Global Government Headquarters in Geneva. Go ahead, Madam Secretary, Helen responded. The President has just authorized protocol, midnight Sunday. Ambassador Morgan has rejected the Council's ultimatum at the station. Commander Sullivan is preparing to jump to Zentara Prime in approximately 30 seconds. The diplomatic option has been exhausted. We are now in a military confrontation. What is the current status of Earth's defensive capabilities? We are ready for anything they might try, Madam Secretary. If the Council fleet attacks, they are going to discover why humanity managed to colonize an entire solar system in just 2 generations. They are going to learn what happens when you threaten people who have been fighting for survival since they first stood upright on 2 legs. Good luck, Admiral. The entire planet is counting on you to keep them safe. The communication channel closed. Helen turned to address all the personnel in the command center. All stations move to battle, alert status immediately. This is not a drill. Captain Brooks, transmit the signal to all ships and all platforms. Execute defensive formation Sierra 9. Activate all hidden platforms. Power up all stealth vessels and drop their concealment fields. If the Council wants a fight, we will give them a battle they will remember for 1,000 years. Across Earth's orbital space, an amazing transformation took place in a matter of seconds. Debris that had been floating harmlessly for months suddenly split apart to reveal hidden weapon platforms. Construction equipment that had appeared abandoned and useless, powered up with lights and active sensors. Machinery that looked broken suddenly bristled with railguns and missile batteries. And in the darkness of space beyond the orbit of the moon, 12 massive battleships dropped their stealth fields and appeared like ghosts materializing out of nowhere. On the Council flagship called Sovereignty's Pride, Fleet Commander Zaxthor stared at his sensor displays in complete disbelief. His 4 eyes opened wide as the number of detected human military assets suddenly tripled in the space of 10 seconds. How is this possible? He demanded, loudly. We had complete and continuous surveillance of all Earth space. Our intelligence reports were supposed to be comprehensive. Where did all these additional weapons and ships come from? His intelligence officer, Subcommander Rixtal, worked frantically at her console trying to make sense of the sensor data. Commander, I am analyzing the new contacts now. Those construction platforms we identified as civilian shipyards are actually military installations with heavy weapons. The debris field we cataloged as abandoned materials from old construction projects has been hiding functional weapon platforms. And those 12 capital ships that just appeared are using stealth technology that our sensors cannot fully analyze. They are reading at the same size class as our own battleships, but their power signatures are much higher than anything we expected humans to possess. Zaxthor felt a cold sensation run through his entire body. His species experienced fear as a temperature drop in their circulatory system. Get me a communication channel to Ambassador Kree-Lax immediately. We need new instructions from the Council leadership. Before the communication could be established, alarm systems began blaring throughout the bridge. The warning sounds were loud and urgent. Tactical officer, report! Zaxthor shouted over the noise. Multiple target locks detected. The tactical officer called back. Every human platform and every human ship has weapon systems trained directly on our fleet. I am reading massive power spikes consistent with charging energy weapons. I am also detecting missile tubes being prepared for launch across their entire defensive network. Sir, they have enough firepower aimed at us right now to destroy our entire fleet in the first exchange. They are bluffing, Zaxthor said, but his voice lacked any real conviction. They would not dare fire the first shot and start a war, would they? Lieutenant Commander Paul Jennings sat in the command chair of the United Nations Ship Sentinel, one of the original 43 vessels in the human fleet. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Maya Russell, looked at him waiting for orders. Her hands were steady on her controls, but her eyes showed the tension everyone felt. Sir, we have active target locks on 15 Council vessels. All weapons are ready to fire. We are awaiting your orders. Hold your position and maintain your locks, Paul said in a calm voice. Let them think about their situation. Let them realize what kind of trap they have flown into. Let them understand that we are serious about defending our home. Across the entire human fleet, the same scene played out on every bridge of every ship. Captains and crews waited with weapons ready and targets locked. They were showing the Council that humanity had real military power and was absolutely willing to use it if forced. On Liberty Station, Helen watched her tactical display with intense focus. Every single Council ship was now highlighted in red on her screen. Each one was being tracked by multiple targeting systems. Dozens of weapons were aimed at each enemy vessel. One word from her, and the battle would begin. One order and hundreds of ships would start firing, and thousands of people would die. Her communications officer spoke up. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Council flagship. They are requesting immediate communication. Audio, only channel. Put it through, Helen ordered. Human Admiral, this is Fleet Commander Zax Thor of the Council Defense Force. I am requesting immediate dialogue to discuss the current tactical situation. There is nothing to discuss, Commander, Helen replied in a cold voice. You came to our home with threats, backed by an armada. We have shown you that we are not defenseless prey. We have shown you that we have teeth, and we know how to use them. You have 48 hours to withdraw from Earth space. The countdown started the moment our ambassador rejected your ultimatum. You are risking a war with the entire Galactic Council over pride? Over your refusal to accept reasonable oversight? No, Commander. We are defending our freedom and our right to govern ourselves. You are the ones who brought warships to what should have been a diplomatic discussion. You wanted to see our military capabilities? Take a very close look at your sensor displays. Every ship in your fleet, every single one, is targeted by multiple weapon systems. We can end this confrontation in less than 3 minutes if you force our hand. There was silence on the communication channel for several long seconds. My orders from the Council are to secure human compliance with the terms that were offered. Then you have a choice to make, Commander. You can follow those orders and discover why humanity survived every disaster, every predator, every disease, and every war that our planet threw at us for millions of years. Or you can show wisdom and withdraw your forces. Either way, we are not surrendering our freedom. Either way, we are not submitting to your demands. On Zentara Prime, the Council chamber had transformed from a place of comfortable authority into a bunker filled with desperate planning. The main holographic display was split to show 2 different scenes at the same time. On one side was the human battleship hanging in orbit above their capital city like a sword ready to fall. On the other side was the standoff happening at Earth, where 300 Council ships faced a human defense that had turned out to be much stronger than anyone had predicted. Emergency Counselor Thexlar was a military veteran who had fought in the last major galactic conflict 2 centuries ago. He studied both tactical situations with growing respect for how thoroughly the humans had outplayed the Council. They have completely outmaneuvered us at every level, he said as his translator converted his clicking speech into standard galactic language. Look at the precision and timing of their response. The rejection happens at the Council station. Simultaneously, their hidden fleet reveals itself at Earth, and with perfect coordination, their battleship appears here. This was not a panicked reaction to our ultimatum. They have been preparing for this exact scenario for a very long time. Ambassador Krelax's sensory stalks were twitching with barely controlled anger. It is one ship, Counselor. Just one single ship. We have hundreds of atmospheric fighters based on this planet. We could launch our entire fighter wing and overwhelm that human vessel through pure numbers even if their technology is superior. Counselor Tembri, whose reptilian face had lost most of its normal color, shook her head firmly. And then what happens, Ambassador? They fire their weapons and turn our capital into a smoking crater before our fighters manage to destroy their ship. How many millions of civilians die to satisfy your wounded pride? How do we justify those deaths to the survivors and to history? Thexlar called up more detailed tactical analysis on the display screens. I have been carefully studying their battleship's performance and capabilities. Its stealth technology that allowed it to penetrate all of our sensor networks undetected is at least 3 decades ahead of our projections for human technological development. Its power output suggests weapon systems that we have never encountered in any known civilization. And it executed a faster-than-light jump directly into high orbit, without using any of our jump gates or known navigation routes. That means their FTL drive technology is significantly more advanced than anything we currently possess. Ambassador Krelax paced back and forth in agitation. So what are you suggesting? That we simply withdraw our forces and admit that a newcomer species has defeated the Galactic Council? That we accept this humiliation? I am suggesting that we recognize reality instead of denying it, Thexlar said firmly. We have 300 warships at Earth. They have approximately 70 now, that their hidden assets are revealed. But they hold a strong defensive position, and their weapons technology appears to be equal to, or possibly superior to ours. Here at our homeworld, they have one of their ships holding millions of our civilians hostage. If we attack their forces at Earth, they will attack here and kill our people. If we attack their ship here, they presumably have response plans ready for Earth. This is what humans call a stalemate. Both sides can hurt each other badly, but neither side can win without terrible losses. That is completely unacceptable, Krelax shouted. But it is factual regardless of whether we find it acceptable. Texlar replied. I propose that we step back and consider what we actually wanted from humanity in the first place. We wanted their compliance with our trade regulations. We wanted oversight of their military development. We approached them with threats and ultimatums because we assumed they would simply give in to superior force. They did not give in. They responded with force of their own. Now we must decide whether our original goals are worth the cost of an actual war. On the Defiance in orbit above Zentara Prime, Commander Greg Sullivan received a coded transmission from Earth. The message was brief, but its meaning was significant. The Council was debating their options instead of attacking. Every hour that passed without combat was a small victory for the human position. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Hughes called from her navigation station. I am detecting a single small spacecraft launching from the surface. It is broadcasting standard diplomatic identification codes and is requesting permission to approach our ship. Greg exchanged meaningful looks with his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Nick Palmer. This could be a trap of some kind, Nick said quietly. They might be trying to get close enough to deploy a weapon. It could be a trap, or it could be someone ready to start real negotiations. Greg made his decision. Grant them permission to approach. Have them dock at Airlock 3. Security teams should be standing by in full combat gear, just in case this is some kind of trick. 20 minutes later, Greg found himself sitting in the Defiance's small conference room. Across the table from him sat a being he recognized from intelligence briefings. Emergency Counselor Thexlar was known as a respected military strategist and one of the more reasonable and pragmatic voices on the Council. Thexlar studied the human commander carefully. You are very young to be carrying such enormous responsibility on your shoulders. In human terms, I am 34 years old. For my species, that is a fully mature, adult age. Yes, I sometimes forget that. Your lifespans are much shorter than most Council species. You mature faster. You develop faster. Everything about your civilization seems to operate at an accelerated pace compared to our experience. Thexlar settled his body into a chair that had been specially modified for his different anatomy. Commander Sullivan, I need you to understand that I am here in an unofficial capacity. The Council has not sent me. I came on my own initiative, Because I am old enough to remember the last war we fought. I have no desire to see another war in my lifetime. Neither do we, Counselor. Humanity does not want war. Yet here we are in this dangerous situation. My homeworld is hostage to your ship's weapons. Your homeworld is surrounded by our fleet. This is a scenario where any small mistake or miscalculation could lead to catastrophic loss of life on both sides. Greg leaned forward and looked directly at the alien counselor. With all due respect, Counselor, we did not create this situation. The council delivered an ultimatum that was backed by overwhelming military force. What did you expect us to do in response? We expected you to comply with our terms. We expected you to negotiate. We expected you to seek some kind of compromise. Thexlar's mandibles clicked together in a gesture that Greg's cultural training had taught him was similar to a rueful smile. What we did not expect was this level of preparation. We did not expect this degree of capability. We did not expect this willingness to risk everything. We analyzed human psychology incorrectly based on flawed assumptions. You assumed we were like you, Greg said. You have known peace for 200 years. You have forgotten what real desperation looks like. You have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. Humans have never forgotten those things. We clawed our way up from tribal warfare to spaceflight. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We faced extinction from diseases and climate disasters. Every single generation of humanity has known some form of conflict. We hope for peace. Counselor, we really do. But we always prepare for war because history has taught us that hope alone is not enough. I am beginning to understand that about your species. Thexlar produced a small data storage device from his clothing. I have brought a proposal with me. This is completely unofficial, as I said before. It is a framework for de-escalation that might allow both sides to step back from the edge of this precipice we are standing on. Greg listened carefully as Thexlar outlined the basic structure. Mutual withdrawal of forces. Revised terms for negotiation that treated humanity as an equal partner instead of a subordinate. Recognition of human sovereignty over their own territory and colonies. A gradual integration process into galactic civilization instead of forced immediate compliance. I need to transmit this proposal to Earth Command for review and approval, Greg said when Thexlar had finished explaining. I cannot make these decisions on my own authority. Of course, I understand completely. I will wait here for your response. But Commander, you need to understand something important. There are factions on the Council who will strongly oppose any compromise with humanity. They believe that giving ground to you sets a dangerous precedent for other species. You may need to maintain your current threatening posture for some time, yet while the political situation develops. We can maintain this position as long as necessary, Counselor. The real question is whether your homeworld can handle the stress of having an armed battleship in orbit indefinitely. 3 days later, Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But the atmosphere in the vast room was completely different from the last time she had been here. The Council delegates no longer sat with casual authority and confident superiority. Instead, they looked at the human delegation with wary respect and barely concealed concern. The holographic display no longer showed threats and ultimatums. Instead, it showed a proposed treaty with new terms that treated humanity as an equal partner. Counselor Thexlar stood before the assembly to make the official announcement. The revised Accords of Cooperation recognize humanity as a sovereign equal among all Council species. Trade between human worlds and Council worlds will be conducted through fair negotiation, not through imposed regulations. Human military development will be subject to the same transparency requirements as all Council members. This means mutual reporting and information sharing. Nothing more and nothing less. Human colonies will remain under human jurisdiction and governance. Lisa carefully reviewed the complete document on her tablet computer. Beside her, Admiral Jack Hayes examined the military annexes and technical specifications with great attention to detail. After several minutes of silent reading, Lisa stood up from her seat to address the council. This treaty is acceptable to Earth and to all human governments. However, we have one addition that we would like to propose for inclusion. The entire council chamber seemed to tense up at those words. What could the humans possibly want to add to terms that were already very favorable to them? We propose the establishment of regular military exchange programs. Human officers would be stationed aboard council ships to observe and learn. Council officers would be embedded with human fleet units in the same way. If we are going to coexist peacefully in the same galaxy, we need to understand each other's capabilities and military doctrines. Real transparency and real understanding reduce the chances of future misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. Ambassador Krelax, who had been mostly silent during this session, finally spoke up. You would be willing to share your stealth technology? You would reveal your advanced faster-than-light drive systems? Eventually, yes, in exchange for access to other technologies that the Council possesses. But more importantly than any specific technology, we want to share the fundamental understanding that threats and military posturing lead to situations where everyone loses. The last 72 hours have been extremely educational for all of us, both human and council alike. Councillor Thexlar gestured his agreement in the way his species showed approval. Indeed, that is very true. The council made the mistake of assuming that youth meant weakness. We were profoundly incorrect in that assumption, and humans assumed that galactic civilization would be entirely rational and peaceful. Lisa replied. We were also incorrect in that assumption. Perhaps all of us can learn valuable lessons from these events. The vote was called, and the result was unanimous. The Accords of Cooperation passed with full support from all council members. Humanity was now established not as a subjugated junior member of galactic civilization, but as an equal partner with full rights and full respect. Aboard the Defiance, still maintaining its orbit above Zentara Prime, Commander Greg Sullivan received the order from Earth Command to stand down from combat alert. He turned to his bridge crew and saw the relief clearly visible on every face. Well done, everyone. You performed your duties perfectly under extremely difficult circumstances. Helm, set a course for Earth. Let us go home. As the Defiance began preparing for its faster-than-light jump back to human space, Greg looked one last time at the beautiful planet floating below his ship. They had come to Zentara Prime to make a very bold statement. Mission accomplished successfully. But he understood that this was only the beginning of a much longer journey. Humanity had forced its way to the negotiating table through military strength. Now came the much harder task of building genuine peaceful relationships with dozens of very different alien civilizations. Lieutenant Amy Hughes smiled from her station. Sir, we are receiving a priority message from Liberty Station. Admiral Carter wants to personally congratulate you. Also, there is apparently talk in the government about giving you a medal for this mission. Tell the Admiral that I was simply doing my duty. The real heroes in this situation were the diplomats who found a way to turn a military standoff into a peace treaty that everyone can accept. I will pass along your message, sir. But I think everyone throughout human space knows that you scared the Council into taking negotiations seriously. Greg shrugged in a casual gesture. Fear is a temporary emotion that fades quickly. Respect has to be earned through consistent actions over time. We have made a good start on both fear and respect. Now we have to see if we can build something positive and lasting from this beginning. The Defiance executed its jump and disappeared from Zentara Prime's orbit in a flash of exotic energy. The space above the Council homeworld was once again empty and peaceful, but the galaxy had changed in fundamental ways. Humanity had announced itself to the stars, not as helpless victims or eager supplicants, but as a force that demanded respect and would fight to defend its freedom. On Earth in the city of Geneva, President Laura Bennett addressed the entire planet through a live global broadcast that was transmitted to every colony and every ship. Today, humanity took its rightful place among the stars. We did this not through conquest or aggression, but through our unwavering resolve to remain free. We showed the Galactic Council that we will always defend our freedom and our right to determine our own future. But we also showed them that we prefer cooperation and peaceful coexistence over conflict and war. The coming years will bring many challenges to us. We will engage in cultural exchanges with alien civilizations. We will share technology and knowledge. We will navigate complex diplomatic situations. But we will face all of these challenges as equals, as respected partners, and as proof that even the youngest species can stand tall when they stand united together. In homes across Earth and in colonies scattered throughout the solar system, billions of humans celebrated this moment. They were not celebrating a military victory in war. They were celebrating the fact that they had avoided a catastrophic war while maintaining their dignity, their freedom, and their sovereignty as an independent civilization. In the extensive archives maintained by the Galactic Council, scholars and historians began the process of updating their official assessments of humanity. The file entry that had once been somewhat dismissive of human capabilities now carried a prominent warning. Underestimate humans at your own peril and risk. They are survivors who evolved on a dangerous world. They are innovators who advance technology at an unprecedented pace. And when they are pressed into a corner or threatened, they become warriors of unexpected sophistication and determination. Out in the darkness between the stars, the 11 other battleships that made up humanity's secret ghost fleet returned quietly to their hidden stations in the outer solar system. They powered down their weapons and returned to standby status. They were ready to deploy again if needed, but everyone hoped desperately that they would never be needed again. The age of human isolation and vulnerability had finally ended. The age of humanity's full participation in galactic civilization had begun. And the Galactic Council had learned the same lesson that Earth's own bloody history had taught humanity many times over thousands of years. Sometimes the smallest and youngest power sitting at the negotiating table can change everything and reshape the entire situation. They can do this if they have the courage to risk everything, the strength to back up their words with action, and the wisdom to seek peace even when they have demonstrated their capacity for war. Humanity had shown all three of these qualities in equal measure. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again.